crimes that happen in the gooning community. And as the video goes on, the people behind them will go from twisted individuals to terrifying criminals. And yes, I'm serious. It's July 2024, and the Arkansas State Medical Board receives a report about a doctor allegedly engaging in inappropriate intimate conduct with both staff members and patients. Attached to the report is CCTV footage showing the doctor, identified as David Define, walking around in his private clinic with nothing on except a baseball cap. And he could be seen going down the hallway passing several wards where patients could see him, before appearing in what looks like an office area. He then starts doing things to himself and eventually ejects substances on one of the women in the room, who was working as a lab technician and also happened to be one of David's patients. The report would also accuse David of using his position of power and promise of salary increases to take advantage of both employees and patients into performing repulsive intimate acts, all within the clinic during business hours. After examining both the footage and its accompanying claims, the medical board would release a statement saying, "The pervasive behavior leads to concerns about an intimate compulsive disorder or paraphilia, which may in fact cross boundaries with his delivery of medical care. Simply the interaction with his office staff suggests an entanglement in his medical practice. Given these additional concerns, I would recommend that he have a more professional evaluation for safety to practice." But when David was actually interviewed by the board, he denied it, saying, "I don't know anything about that at all. I would have to see those things to have an idea what you're talking about." But this wasn't the first time he would be facing a disciplinary hearing. Back in January of 2024, the Arkansas Medical Board launched an investigation into his online activities after receiving a complaint that he was posting explicit pictures on Instagram under the username Naked Dr. Dave. David would then send a letter to the board claiming he's a well-known naturist and that his content was aimed at promoting acceptance and body positivity. "We do not shame, fear, or negatively stigmatize the unclothed body, and there's no crossover whatsoever with my professionalism while practicing medicine and my naturist activities." And this defense actually seemed to change the minds of the board members, as by June, when the investigation was wrapped up, they decided to not take any actions against him and instead just added the complaint to his file. The strange part is, David actually has a long history of escaping such consequences. Back in 2011, he was investigated for alleged illegal distribution of pain medication, but ended up entering into a deferred prosecution agreement, and so the charges were actually dropped, and David simply agreed not to practice medicine in Missouri for 3 years. He would then later find himself in the spotlight again in 2017, after he was accused of allegedly describing excessive amounts of controlled substances, and this would lead to his license only getting temporarily suspended before the charges were dropped again due to a lack of evidence. But this time it was different. The story had already gone viral, which means millions of people were waiting to see what kinds of punishment David would receive for his actions. And on August 8, 2025, he decided to have an extensive interview with an Arkansas-based news outlet called NEA Report, addressing all the allegations against him. Because, according to David, the only thing true about all the allegations was the fact that he would always walk around the clinic without clothes on, as seen in the leaked video, which he also believed was released by his ex-fiancée, Allegra Milzitz, out of spite. David claims that he and Allegra had broken up in February of 2023, only for her to return over a year later trying to get back with him. But when he refused, she decided to expose his horrible behavior behind the scenes. Now, while the report was filed anonymously, David claims he was able to decode where it came from. But if David's intention with this interview was to switch the public's perception in his favor or sway the decision of the medical board, then unfortunately it didn't work, as he would end up receiving a much harder punishment than in the previous cases. In October of 2024, the Arkansas State Medical Board issued an emergency order of suspension, charging him with violations of the Medical Practices Act and board regulations, and accusing him of having inappropriate relations with his patients and staff members. The board described David as an ongoing danger to the public in his continued practice of medicine, and the case would finally come to its conclusion in August of 2025, when the medical board voted unanimously to revoke David's medical license for 5 years, which means he'll be free to practice again by 2030. But what comes next is even more disturbing, since the suspect almost got away with it in public.
Court documents show this mother and daughter were victimized by the suspect, and they say this latest incident has them reliving their trauma.
Back in July of 2024, a bizarre video suddenly appeared on social media, showing a woman chasing a strange man out of a Dollar Tree store located in southwest Philly. The video, which was recorded about a month earlier, shows the woman, who we'll call Grace, crying and accusing a man of releasing fluids on her leg inside the store. The same day the video was posted online, the police would release CCTV images showing the man's face clearly and asking for the public's help in identifying him. And according to the statement, store employees have reported that the man is known to frequent the Snyder Plaza and the nearby Interstate 95 underpass, where he may park a vehicle. The suspect is described as a black male, aged 25 to 30, with a dark complexion, standing 6 feet tall, of stocky build, with a short receding hairline, a full beard, and wearing black t-shirt, gray shorts, and black sneakers. This case would also gain the attention of Philly rapper Meek Mill, who decided to drop a bounty on the subject. Let's play manhunt with him today in Philly, some community service. I got 2 bands for his location. Meek Mill posted on his Twitter account. With both the authorities and the internet looking for him, it didn't actually take long before his identity was revealed as 35-year-old Gary Miles. But before anyone could find him, Gary would actually turn himself in to the police that evening. And his long list of charges included indecent attack, indecent exposure, open lewdness, and harassment. And the Philadelphia Police Department would also release a statement thanking the community for their assistance in locating Gary, while promising to take the case as seriously as possible. But while it appeared that the story had reached a conclusion, there was still one question left unanswered. The incident happened in June, so why didn't the police do anything about it until Grace posted the video about a month later? Grace's mother also raised this point when she spoke to news reporters about the incident, emphasizing that she wasn't pleased with how the Philadelphia police handled their investigation. They didn't take this case seriously in the beginning. They didn't take the case seriously until my daughter posted her video. It's traumatizing for her. It's hard for everyone in my house. But this wasn't the first time the police would fumble a case involving Gary. As it turns out, he's actually a repeat offender. Days after his arrest, a woman named Serena Daniels and her daughter, Deidre Coleman, would come out to recount their own disturbing encounter with Gary from over a decade ago, detailing how he broke into their house several times and exposed himself to Serena, who was pregnant at the time. The name popped out, and then when I looked at the mugshot, I was like, that's him. Apparently, Gary had taken a plea deal at the time, saving him from proper prison time and allowing him to keep terrorizing other women. And considering how long ago this particular incident happened, it appears Gary never stopped being a creep. According to court documents, he's also been arrested several times after that, including a 2011 incident in Montgomery and Clinton counties in Pennsylvania, with similar charges of indecent exposure, open lewdness, and disorderly conduct. In many of these cases, Gary received the minimum punishment, probation, psychological evaluation, and a 1-year sentence. Gary's trial is still pending. What comes next, however, is another public offense that turned very disturbing.
It was hard for them to watch Johnson sit on the side. He'd watch these women and pull up next to them before going underneath their cars. One of these women telling police she's been having nightmares about the incident.
On August 29, 2024, a woman simply identified as Chanel drove into the Superstar Wash in Gilbert, Arizona, while taking her son to school. As soon as she was vacuuming her vehicle, a strange man, later identified as 28-year-old Jesse Michael Johnson, would pull into the parking spot right next to Chanel, get out of his vehicle, and sneak under her car to peek at her feet. This would go on for several minutes before Jesse would return to his car and pretend to be cleaning his tires. And they both eventually leave. But a couple of hours later, Jesse would return to the car wash and do the exact same thing to another woman, while she was also vacuuming her car, before leaving again and returning a third time the same day with the same mission. Each of these women had one thing in common: they were all wearing flip-flops, leaving their feet exposed. At this point, the staff at the car wash started to notice Jesse's pattern of behavior, and after checking the CCTV footage, they realized they had to file a report with the police concerning the creepy incident. And so about a month later, on September 24th, Jesse was actually arrested and charged with 3 counts of voyeurism and 3 counts of disorderly conduct. But the disturbing part of the story was that this wasn't Jesse's first offense, as it was later revealed that he'd been arrested multiple times in Nebraska back in 2016 for hiding under women's cars and grabbing their ankles without their consent. At the time, he was only charged with breaching the peace and sentenced to 2 years of probation, in addition to a fine of $150 and a mandatory psychological evaluation. But he didn't seem to learn his lesson. During his interrogation, Jesse would reveal that he was intimately attracted to women's feet and he couldn't control his desires, which is why he would sneak under their car to watch them without their consent. While talking to the press after Jesse was arrested, Chanel revealed that the incident deeply affected her, saying she felt taken advantage of and had been having nightmares ever since. Going to the community and doing this to women is absolutely disgusting, and I don't think he realizes what it's doing to us as the victims. I couldn't believe that I was in that situation. I just had a baby 2 weeks prior to this. I have 2 other. It was a very scary situation, especially with my little boy with me when it happened. The Maricopa County Attorney's Office would eventually refer Jesse's case to prosecutors for misdemeanor prosecution, and his bond was set at $10,000, and a court date was issued. However, the rest of his trial was held behind closed doors, and no information was revealed to the public. But the next case is even more unsettling, because it involves a government official committing a crime in plain sight.
A member of the Brazilian parliament was filmed in parliament during a full session, in other words, in public and working for the nation. He was filmed watching.
It's May 2015. João Rodrigues, a Brazilian politician representing the state of Santa Catarina under the Social Democratic Party, is doom-scrolling on his phone during a plenary session of the House of Representatives, unaware that the press was about to expose his deepest, darkest secrets. While the rest of the Chamber of Deputies debate on electoral reform, João was busy flicking through pictures and videos of scantily dressed women and very obscene content on his phone. And although he actually tried to hide the phone under the desk, one of the journalists present at the meeting noticed what he was doing and started recording. At some point in the video, João could even be seen showing the images to his colleagues as they crowded around him, while some even peeked over his shoulder to catch a glance of the explicit content he was fully engrossed in. This video would end up going viral online, putting João at the center of a massive controversy. But in his defense, João claimed that he was just fiddling with his phone when the pictures were sent to one of the WhatsApp groups he was in, and that he immediately deleted the pictures and blocked the person who sent them after finding out that they were explicit in nature. I have over 70 groups with governors and bar buddies. It's hard to control what I receive in them. I asked them to stop them because the group isn't just made up of men. We have women and families there. And when questioned about why he was on his phone fiddling during official meetings, João defended himself by pointing out the fact that almost all the other 200 deputies were also on their phones at the time, especially since nothing serious was going on. And his defense actually seemed to work, since he never faced any sort of disciplinary sanctions from the Chamber's Ethics Committee, although it would become a point of criticism by his colleagues every time he engaged in a debate regarding morality. Unlike him though, this next offender didn't just get caught on the job, he almost caused a mass murder.
A police officer is off the job after he crashed his patrol car while watching, let's just say, things he definitely should not have been watching at that time.
Lake County Police Deputy Tristan McComer's job description was simple. He was a deputy at the Lake County Sheriff's Office, and so he had to protect the community, fight for justice, and follow the very laws he swore to defend. But in late 2024, Tristan would make a choice that shattered that promise, completely ruined his career, and nearly cost several innocent people their lives. It begins on November 6th. Tristan is behind the wheel of his patrol car, driving southbound on County Road 435 in Sorrento. In front of him is a woman driving a Toyota, and just ahead of them in the opposite lane, a school bus comes to a stop, its warning lights flashing, signaling that are either boarding or getting off. The Toyota driver slams on the brakes to give the school bus the right way, but Tristan is actually busy scrolling through his phone instead of paying attention to the road, and just seconds later he would plow straight into the Toyota, rear-ending the driver and almost causing a serious accident. The impact was strong enough to deploy the steering wheel airbag in the patrol vehicle, but both Tristan and the victim escaped without any injuries. But as soon as Tristan realized what just happened, he gets down from the patrol car, walks over to the woman and starts apologizing. Other officers soon arrive at the scene and began questioning Tristan about the situation, but instead of taking responsibility for the crash, Tristan would actually push the blame on the lady he rear-ended. He claimed that he didn't realize she'd stopped and insisted that his brakes had suddenly locked up, leaving him no time or space to swerve out the way. He even went a step further, telling officers that the patrol car's speedometer had recently been recalibrated and that the anti-lock braking system light had been on ever since. All the while, Tristan knew the truth. The accident was entirely his fault, but he was willing to say anything to avoid punishment. For a while, everyone simply accepted Tristan's version of the story, but that all changed when the Lake County Sheriff's Office launched a deeper investigation into what really happened that day. And once they examined Tristan's body cam footage, one detail would emerge, flipping the case completely upside down. It turns out Tristan had been actually watching explicit content on his phone at least 15 seconds before the crash, and when confronted with the footage, Tristan simply pushed back. He insisted he wasn't looking at anything inappropriate, claiming he just finished a phone call with another deputy and was merely scrolling through messages in a group chat with 3 fellow officers. However, when the detectives investigating the case examined the group chat, they found no pictures or videos posted on the day of the crash. And the very next day, Tristan was called in for a formal interview, and this time, with the lies falling apart around him, he finally came clean, admitting that he was looking at inappropriate photos and explicit material on his phone while driving. By the time the investigation was concluded, Tristan would be charged with 3 violations: departure from the truth in giving testimony or in connection with any official duties, misusing electronic handheld devices while in the line of duty, and failure to use a seatbelt. With his credibility destroyed and his future in law enforcement completely shattered, Tristan quietly resigned, and to this day it remains unclear whether he faced any further consequences for his conduct. What comes next, however, is a case so bizarre that even the cops were creeped out.
Literally just touching himself to us, making eye contact with us. Everyone in the store sees it.
Miami Beach, Florida, March 11, 2022. Alyssa DeMaria is out getting coffee at the Starbucks, located on Collins Avenue and 29th Street. It's 9:30 a.m. on a Friday, and the cafe is packed. But what Alyssa doesn't know is that she's about to witness one of the most shocking things to ever happen inside a Starbucks. Just moments later, a 27-year-old homeless man identified as Blake Rain would walk into the coffee shop, head straight to the American flag in the corner, pull down his pants, and start doing what he did in front of everyone.
It's disgusting.
and she pulls out the phone to record, yelling for him to stop, but Blake simply doesn't care. He doesn't even act like she's there. And what's even more disturbing is that Alyssa seems to be the only one bothered by what Blake is doing. Everyone else could be seen going about their business, and you could even hear the baristas calling out names of customers to come pick up their orders. Despite getting filmed and yelled at, Blake would continue doing what he did for the next 10 minutes before someone would eventually call 911. But as soon as the cops arrived, Blake would take off running. The officers ordered him to stop, but he wouldn't listen, so they actually shot him with a dart-firing stun gun, hoping to slow him down. This didn't work, however, as Blake would simply pull out the darts out of his body and take off again. It would eventually take 8 shots of the dart to fully knock him out, so the cops could catch up. And when they did, they made sure to deliver a couple of blows and kicks to his lower back. The rest was so violent that one of the officers even walked away with a small injury. But as for Blake, he would be transported to the Mount Sinai Medical Center for treatment, before he was then moved to a correctional center and charged with lewd behavior, disorderly conduct in an establishment, and resisting an officer without violence. His bond was set at $700. Starbucks would also later release a statement addressing the situation, saying,
"Once alerted to the customer's behavior, our partners took action and local authorities were immediately called. We want our stores to be a welcoming environment, and our partners are empowered to address any behavior that doesn't meet our third place policy."
This next one, however, involves an individual who took this to a dangerous level nobody ever thought possible.
Prosecutors say 32-year-old Calvin Jones told police he touches himself in public because he likes the thrill of being caught.
Calvin Jones was an adult content creator who became known for constantly recording his content in public, doing stuff to himself inappropriately where people could actually see him. But in 2023, that behavior caught up to him. He was arrested and charged with public indecency. His bond was set at $3,000, which was posted so he could remain free while the trial moved forward. But the most disturbing part of this case happened on September 4, 2024, when Calvin would escalate his immoral conduct to a criminal charge. It begins with a 911 call from a business near 19th and Wells in Milwaukee, near the Marquette University campus, after Calvin was seen on surveillance video exposing himself and doing stuff to himself outside the business. But the moment he actually saw an officer coming, Calvin got into his vehicle and waited for the squad car to pull up behind him. And just as the officer activates his lights and siren, Calvin would turn on his car and accelerate towards West Wisconsin Avenue. It was clear that Calvin was looking for a chase, and for a brief moment he got exactly what he wanted, with Calvin driving at around 70 miles per hour, weaving through the neighborhood like a maniac. And it wouldn't take long before the officer actually lost sight of him, bringing the chase to an end. But that was just the beginning. October 2nd, 2024, officers of the Milwaukee Police Department spot Calvin, who had now been declared a fugitive, driving his white 2007 Buick LaCrosse. They try to stop him, but he again flees, driving recklessly through several streets. But when one of the officers sees that the chase could get dangerous, he decides to terminate the pursuit before somebody gets hurt. And while conducting surveillance on Calvin later that evening, officers spot his vehicle again, traveling south on North 22nd Street, before stopping in front of his house. And they try to arrest him again, but he actually manages to escape. Fast forward to December 24th, and the Milwaukee police would respond to a distress call from an address near 20th and Kilburn. The woman on the other end informs the officer about a suspicious male in a white sedan who'd walk past her residence with nothing underneath. But before the officers could arrive at the scene, Calvin once again disappeared. His luck would eventually run out on January 17th, though, when the police finally arrested him during a traffic stop. And when asked about the previous incidents, Calvin revealed that he rides around and stops at certain places to expose himself, because there are usually people walking around, and that he enjoys the thrill of getting caught by people while recording his adult content. At the end of the day, Calvin was charged with 2 counts of operating a motor vehicle to flee or in an attempt to elude an officer, and 2 counts of lewd and lascivious behavior. A criminal complaint was later filed against him on January 24, but it's not clear whether he's been sentenced or not. However, this next case involves an offender whose criminal history was so terrible he had to be removed from society altogether.
Prompted by an incident last year at a Plano apartment complex where he worked, authorities say they found 47 other invasive videos on his phone.
It's August 24th, 2022. Officers from the Plano Police Department, Texas, are responding to an emergency call from an apartment complex after a woman caught her maintenance technician filming her without consent. For the sake of the story, we'll call her Jennifer, and the man whose identity was later revealed was 45-year-old Darius Bradford, and he'd been in the home earlier that day to fix some damage. And according to court documents, Darian was a maintenance worker for the apartment complex in which he and Jennifer lived. His duties as a maintenance worker included the repair of air conditioning units. On multiple occasions, he entered Jennifer's apartment in response to requests for repairs to her air conditioning unit. But then Jennifer would later notice that nearly every time he visited to make repairs, Darius would leave his tool bag in the bathroom, explaining that the air conditioning motor was located there. She also noticed that he would leave his phone in the tool bag, which seemed
weird because generally one would keep your phone close.
On one such visit, Darius asked to borrow Jennifer's key because he didn't have a copy, and she asked him to text her when he completed the repair so she could retrieve her key from him. But instead, Darius sent her text messages asking her if she was happily married and asking how he could
find a woman like you, beautiful and sweet.
Jennifer wouldn't respond to the texts, but Darius kept being persistent assistant. And so on the day everything happened, on August 24th, 2022, Darius once again arrived at the apartment in response to another request to repair the air conditioning unit. Jennifer informed Darius that she needed to take a shower and get ready for work. And as he had done on previous occasions, Darius asked Jennifer if he could leave his tool bag in her bathroom. And when she went to the bathroom, Jennifer noticed a box in the tool bag, prompting her to examine the contents. And she quickly discovered that his phone was inside the box, believing it to be recording her. Scared that Darius was still in the house with her, Jennifer would pack the toolbox into a shopping bag and discreetly leave the apartment. And she would drive to the apartment management office to make a report. And after calming her down, the manager would pick up the phone, only to find out that Darius had already been remotely erasing the content on it. But fortunately, Darius wasn't fast enough, as the manager would eventually find actual videos of him setting up the camera in Jennifer's bathroom and immediately notify the Plano Police Department. Upon their arrival, the cops would also find 47 videos of other victims. Darius had discreetly recorded inside various stores and apartment complexes in the community, including one that showed the 15-year-old daughter of his ex-girlfriend. Darius' browsing history also revealed that he'd been conducting online searches for spy cameras. And after placing him under arrest, detectives found and seized additional phones and cameras that he'd used to record people without their consent. And in addition to all of that, Darius also had a large ring of keys on it, several of which were labeled as belonging to the apartment complex. And according to the property manager, he had no permission to have those keys in his possession. Like many of the other offenders, Darius was also a repeat offender. As a matter of fact, the first time he would be arrested for a similar offense was in 2008, when he spent 30 days in a Dallas County jail after recording a woman without her consent at a Ross department store. Then in 2010, Darius would be arrested again for filming another woman at the Galleria Mall, although he was never prosecuted. But he wasn't going to get away with it this time. Following his arrest, Darius was charged with burglary, enhanced to a first-degree felon, which could potentially earn him a sentence of between 5 to 99 years in prison, or even a life sentence, because according to the cops,
the burglary is committed with the intent to commit a felony other than theft.
Darius would eventually plead guilty to the burglary with the intent of secretly filming somebody in June 2023, and after careful consideration, the jury decided to recommend the maximum penalty.
This perpetrator infringed on the privacy of 23 different women on 47 different occasions by secretly recording upskirt and undressing videos. He used his job to gain access and his manipulative personality to gain their trust, definitely earning him a life sentence.
Later in 2024, Darius would attempt to appeal the sentence, claiming that the charges were wrong because they provided two separate paragraphs for the jury to choose from in assessing his punishment, instead of one paragraph which increased the risk that the jury would only consider life confinement instead of the full range of punishment. He also argued that by placing the life option first, the charges unfairly drew the jury's attention to it. However, the record is clear. The trial court instructed the jury that it must decide whether to sentence Appel. However, the appeal was overturned, and Darius soon found himself back behind bars, forced to finish his life sentence. This next one though is even more disturbing, since the offender would end up leaving this earth altogether.
Sir, you need to leave. Unacceptable. Unacceptable.
It's January 7th, 2025, and 27-year-old Nautica Malone pulls into a Bikini Beans coffee drive-thru in Tempe, Arizona, a shop known for its bikini-clad baristas. And this time, Nautica isn't wearing pants or underwear, and judging by the grin on his face, it's pretty clear he's after something else entirely. But what he doesn't realize is that the employee talking to him had been filming the whole thing, and that single video was about to destroy his life forever. Nautica manages to escape before the cops are called, but he couldn't run away from the consequences of his actions. The following day, the video appears in a local Facebook group called Arizona Moms Helping Other Moms, with the caption,
"Alright y'all, be careful. This happened while my sister was at work. She works at Bikini Bean in Tempe. This man had himself exposed as if it was okay. Like absolutely disgusting. If you see him, stay away."
It was from this group that the infamous clip would then spread across several social media platforms, going mega viral and exposing Nautica as a creepy individual. Since his face was clearly shown in the video, it didn't take long for the internet to dig out his personal information, including the fact that Nautica was actually married and had a. But while Nautica was getting criticized and ridiculed online, the original poster of the video would come out with a disturbing update, revealing a plot twist that no one saw coming.
So I had posted this just yesterday. We were able to get the name of the guy who did this. I had spoken with his wife to let her know the situation and that the video was going viral, and she informed me he unalived himself.
According to the police report, just 24 hours after the video was online, Nautica decided that he would leave this earth with the shame of what he'd done. So he took his car to an empty parking lot, called his brother to say goodbye, and left this realm. He also left a note for his wife saying,
"I apologize. I love you, Queen. I made a mistake and I don't think I'll be able to face you and the babies. I don't know why I drove through like that. My mental has been messed up. I am not a monster. Please forgive me. I apologize and I love you forever. If I'm in a critical condition, please pull the plug. To all my family and friends, I love you and I'm sorry. I love my and family." The police would then later release the body cam footage showing Nautica's car in the parking lot with him inside. And while everybody agreed that Nautica's death was kind of his own doing, his mom saw the situation a little differently. In a statement posted on Facebook, she would accuse the barista who recorded the video of being responsible for his son's ultimate passing, promising to fight for justice for Nautica. However, what comes next is even more unsettling, since it involved younger people.
Please, don't do this to me. Are you serious?
It's July 1st, 2021, and a woman named Sarah Moss is just relaxing on the beach with her family near the 2nd Street crossover in Georgia when she suddenly notices something strange in the distance. Sitting just a few feet away from Grace was another woman who appeared to be using certain toys in a not so appropriate manner. And just as Sarah brings out her phone to record, the woman in the distance would also start to make noises. And about 5 minutes later, she would pack up her belongings and leave the area. Grace immediately calls the police to report the incident, and it didn't take long before the 3 officers arrive at the scene, locating the woman in question sitting at a nearby restaurant, wearing a green one-piece suit and carrying a backpack. And the conversation that followed is nothing short of disturbing. After identifying her as 34-year-old Christina Revels-Glick, the police start asking questions about the incident, and at first she seems genuinely confused about what was going on.
What were you doing on the beach? Like, prior to coming here? Prior to coming here? Were you at the beach at some point in time?
Okay, I don't understand.
The officer then informs her that she was actually reported by witnesses who saw her doing stuff on the public beach, and it's at this point that she starts to get defensive.
So apparently you're on the beach.
Who saw that?
I mean, a couple people.
No, they didn't. That's not true.
Seeing how the situation was escalating, Christina becomes visibly embarrassed and tries to play it off as a simple mistake being blown out of proportion before finally admitting that she did what she did on the beach, just not in the way she was being accused of.
It's my vibrator, but I just put it in I was sitting on the beach, and I just. Okay. Do I get a ticket?
In her defense, Christina claims that the witness couldn't have possibly seen her since she was there for only 20 seconds. She also added that the reason she decided to do that in public was because she was stressed from all the drama going on in her life. But that wouldn't stop her from getting arrested and charged with indecent exposure and disorderly conduct. As she was being placed in handcuffs, Christina would break down crying, pleading with the officers before being forced to make the walk of shame out of the restaurant. She was eventually released on bail, but while awaiting trial, Christina's story would take a much darker turn. In November of 2024, 2 years after the incident, the body cam footage of Christina's arrest would suddenly appear on the internet. On one side, there were people who outright condemned her actions, but on the flip side, a lot of people also argued that the case was taken too far, since it was just a misdemeanor. But while the debate was going on, more information started coming out about the aftermath of the arrest. It turns out that Christina actually left this earth on her own on the 31st of March 2022, after slowly spiraling into depression. However, according to her family, her death didn't have anything to do with the arrest or the consequences that follows. In an interview with Daily Mail, Christina's family revealed that she actually had a good life, drove a BMW, and lived in a nice house before her life went downhill. She also had 2 sons, a 19-year-old from one relationship and a 15-year-old from a marriage that ended in divorce in 2015. But then she started getting into trouble, went to prison in Florida, came back, and fell in with the wrong crowd. And this is when her struggle with illicit substances and alcohol started, before she eventually cut off everyone she loved. Not surprisingly, Christina also had multiple encounters with the law, even before the 2021 arrest. One was in 2018, when she was declared a fugitive from justice in Georgia and Florida after she was accused of stealing a car. She would also get arrested on more than one occasion that same year, in addition to a citation for public drunkenness. Other court records in Georgia also reveal several civil filings against her, including charges of unpaid rent, damage to property, and stolen property. Unfortunately, her story would end in tragedy, not just because the nature of her death, but the circumstances surrounding it. Because while Christina passed away in March 2022, her remains weren't actually discovered until about 30 days later, when her landlady visited her apartment in Georgia to demand the rent for the past month. After forcing the door open, she found Christina's body in a pool of blood and immediately called the police. The report by the police department reveals that a pistol was found lying on the master bedroom bed, and directly above the bed was a hole in the roof. The officers also found Christina's body on the opposite side of the hallway, but strangely there was a large amount of blood on the living room floor, along with 2 separate blood trails leading in both directions in the hallway. Blood was also observed in a guest bedroom, on a chair, desk, and a computer, which means that Christina didn't pass away immediately, but unfortunately was probably crawling around the house trying to get help. She was eventually transported back to her hometown, where she was cremated. This next case, however, involves the unsettling story of a public figure who took advantage of the people under him and paid dearly for it.
And said, "Can I ask you something?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Can I, in front of you in your dressing room?"
Louis C.K. is a famous comedian, known for his edgy and candid humor, mixed with constant references to intimate relations and self-pleasure. Jokes about doing stuff to oneself were extremely common in every Louis C.K. stand-up show, leading to rumors about how these comedic stories may have actually been inspired by his personal experiences.
Like, now I know when I see a guy in the West Side Highway off in plain daylight, that's not a homeless guy, that's a married man right there. He's got nowhere to go.
In one bit, he explains about not being able to find a private place in his house to do stuff without getting interrupted, so he would decide to do it in the streets where people could see him. Other times, he would call himself a prisoner of his own perversions. For many years, his fans believed that Louis couldn't possibly be as perverted as the jokes he actually told. But in November of 2017, the New York Times released an article proving that Louis was exactly the man he portrayed on stage. The story begins in 2002. Dana Min Goodman and Julia Wolof, a comedy duo from Chicago, had just landed the biggest opportunity of their career, a chance to perform at the United States Comedy Arts Festival in Aspen, Colorado, and Lewis was also at the event. And after the show was over, he would invite them to hang out in his hotel room. Considering that he was a comedian both Dana and Julia had admired for a long time, they immediately accepted the invitation without hesitation. But as soon as they sat down in his room, still dressed in their winter jackets and hats, Lewis would ask if he could take out his stuff and do stuff to him in front of them. Believing he was joking, Dana and Julia laughed it off. But then Lewis proceeded to take off all of his clothes and start doing stuff to himself. The two women claimed they were so horrified that they held onto each other, screaming and laughing in shock, before immediately exiting the room after he was done. Dana and Julia would later consider reporting Lewis to the police, but eventually decided against it since they didn't know whether his actions were criminal or not. But the most important part is that Dana and Julia aren't the only ones with this kind of story. Back in 2003, actress and comedian Abby Schachner reached out to Lewis with an invitation to one of her shows. But while they were talking on the phone, Abby claims that Lewis would slowly shift the conversation from professional to personal, telling her that he'd seen photos of her on her boyfriend's desk and showering her with compliments. But he wouldn't stop there. According to Abby, Lewis would suddenly start talking about his intimate fantasies, breathing heavily and speaking softly. And it was at that point that she realized he was doing stuff to himself on the other end of the phone. Later in 2005, Lewis would also approach another comedian named Rebecca Corrie while filming a television pilot, asking if she could follow her to his dressing room so he could do stuff in front of her. Angry and completely shocked, Rebecca would obviously decline the invitation, reminding Lewis that he had a daughter and a pregnant wife at home. Stories of the incident were spread around the set in whispers, and Rebecca reported Lewis to the producers, who offered her the chance to shut down the shooting and end the show right here, but she decided not to, so the case was just swept under the rug. The New York Times article also details the story of another victim who chose to remain anonymous, this time in the late 90s, and the fifth victim, who we'll call Courtney, is working in production at the Chris Rock show where Lewis was a writer and producer. And just like he did with other women, Lewis would repeatedly ask her to watch him do stuff to himself in the office during work hours. But before these 5 women even decided to call him out, Lewis seemed to have recognized the gravity of his actions, because in 2009, 6 years after his infamous call with Abby, he would send her an apology note on Facebook saying,
"Last time I talked to you ended in sordid fashion. That was a bad time in my life, and I'm sorry. I remember thinking what a repulsive person I was being by responding the way that I did."
Although no screenshot of the text was provided, the New York Times confirmed it was real, and Abby would even accept the apology. Rebecca Corrie would receive her own apology in 2015. It was an email from Lewis saying he owed her a
very, very late apology.
But just because he apologized privately wouldn't mean that all of the victims were willing to let it go. As soon as the article was released, Lewis' career would take a complete dive. Other comedians would start to distance themselves from him, and his new film, I Love You Daddy, would get cancelled. And Netflix would also put out a statement announcing that they would no longer be producing a second stand-up special. This was in addition to losing his deal with HBO and FX Productions. In the midst of the backlash, Lewis would release a statement through the New York Times, acknowledging that all the stories about him were actually true, while also offering his sincere apologies.
At the time, I said to myself what I did was okay, because I never showed a woman my stuff without asking first, which is also true. But what I learned later in life, too late, is that when you have the power over another person, asking them to look at stuff isn't a question. I've been remorseful of my actions, and I've tried to learn from them and run from them. Now I'm aware of the extent of the impact of my actions. I learned yesterday about the extent to which I left these women who admired me, feeling bad about themselves and cautious around other men who would have never put them in that position. I wish I had reacted to their admiration of me by being a good example to them as a man, and giving them some guidance as a comedian, including because I admired their work. I've spent my long and lucky career talking and saying anything I want. I will now step back and take a long time to listen.
Unlike most other celebrities who got exposed during the #MeToo movement, Lewis appears to have bounced back from the whole controversy and would go on to build an even more successful career than he had before the drama. What comes next, however, is an explosive scandal involving almost every single female celebrity in Hollywood.
Hackers broke into their accounts, stole nude pictures, and then leaked them onto the internet.
It's August 31st, 2014. 36-year-old Ryan Collins is sitting in front of his computer inside his home in Lancaster, Philadelphia, staring at thousands of explicit pictures of some of the most famous celebrities in the world. Rihanna, Jennifer Lawrence, Hilary Duff, and more. This was a project he's been working on for over 2 years, and it was now time to unleash one of the biggest celebrity leaks in internet history. The story begins in 2012. Ryan, a computer technician and IT support specialist, would create fake password reset emails designed to look like it came from legitimate internet service providers, using spoofed servers like email.protection308@icloud.com and more. He would then spend the next 2 years sending these phishing emails to thousands of victims, warning them that their Apple or Google accounts had been compromised, and asking them to provide their usernames and passwords on a fake landing page, which are then forwarded to his personal database. Once he's able to log into these email and iCloud accounts, he immediately gains access to the victim's private information, which included explicit pictures and videos. Through this carefully planned scheme, Ryan managed to infiltrate 50 iCloud accounts and 72 Gmail accounts, most of which belong to female celebrities. While Ryan's working on his own pet project, former high school teacher Christopher Brandon from Virginia was also crafting phishing emails similar to Ryan's. First, he tested out on a couple of students and teachers, and they fall for it, giving him the confidence to proceed with the plan. Phase 1. Forward the phishing email to a database of email addresses he'd acquired over the dark web. Phase 2. Correct the security questions by simply going through the social media accounts of the victims, where they've most likely mentioned the name of their their first dog, their first teacher, or their first nickname. And just like that, access granted. Christopher was able to creep into the email addresses of over 200 victims using this same method, stealing private information and sensitive photographs that were never supposed to see the light of day. Then there's Edward Mayajic, the 28-year-old from Chicago with little to no professional hacking skills, who also managed to illegally infiltrate over 300 Apple iCloud and Gmail accounts using the same exact phishing method. And between April of 2013 to August of 2014, two other hackers from Chicago, 32-year-old Emilio Herrera and 26-year-old George Carafano, were also sending the same kind of phishing emails to the same demographic of female celebrities, obtaining their usernames and passwords to illegally access their iCloud and Gmail accounts. Neither of these 5 hackers ever met in real life. They never communicated, and none of them even knew the other person existed. But coincidentally, they all came up with the same plan at the same time: hack into the phones and computers of female celebrities and obtain as many explicit pictures of them as possible. The hackers also exploited a vulnerability in Apple's Find My Phone system, which allowed them to repeatedly try different passwords on a targeted brute force attack. This way, they could easily avoid triggering the security system designed to lock users out after entering multiple wrong passwords. And at this point, all the hackers were doing was stockpiling these illegally obtained pictures and videos. That was until one of them decided to take things to a whole new level. On August 26, 2014, a post appears on the 4chan's image board and an IB, which is a forum for leaked explicit content, claiming that users had obtained high-value videos and pictures. And later that day, another user on the board would announce that he was trading celebrity pictures and ripping iClouds. This was basically a dog whistle for anyone interested in buying these hacked photographs. But while this user was cashing in on his loot, one of the other hackers would decide to post it for free. On August 31st, a 4chan user would release explicit photographs of over 100 female celebrities on the forum. This included big names like Jennifer Lawrence, Kate Upton, Rihanna, Kim Kardashian, Selena Gomez, Vanessa Hudgens, and Victoria Justice. And a few hours later, Jennifer Lawrence and Kate Upton's private pictures would appear in their individual subreddits, while Kirsten Dunst was posted in the r/celebrity subreddit, to which a user named Exilion Mean Street then comments saying,
"I have dubbed this leak the Fappening."
Not long after, a redditor named John SmackJohn would create a subreddit for the leak, asking members to submit any of the pictures found in the wild. The subreddit The Fappening would end up getting over 50,000 members within the first 10 hours, making it the fastest growing subreddit at the time. A group of 4chan users also launched the hashtag Leak4JLaw on Twitter, encouraging female users to post topless pictures of themselves in solidarity with Jennifer Lawrence. And surprisingly, some internet users actually fell for it. On the other hand, the reaction from the celebrities was varied. While some came out to condemn the incident, others actually completely denied the authenticity of the pictures being shared. Jennifer Lawrence would issue a statement through her spokesperson, calling the leak a flagrant violation of privacy and threatening to prosecute anyone who spreads the images online. Her lawyers would also send letters to several adult sites, demanding that they take down the pictures or face legal consequences. Reacting to her own leaks, Mary Winstead would post 2 tweets, blaming both the hackers responsible for stealing the pictures and the people distributing them on the internet.
"To those of you looking at the pictures I took with my husband years ago in the privacy of our home, hope you feel great about yourselves. Knowing those pictures were deleted long ago, I can only imagine the creepy effort that went into this. Feeling for everyone who got hacked."
Olympic gymnast Michaela Maroney also posted a tweet claiming that any leaked pictures of them were fake. But following the day, her lawyer would put out a statement confirming that not only were the leaks real, but they were actually taken when she wasn't 18 yet, meaning anyone who downloaded the pictures had just committed a felony. After seeing the amount of negative attention the subreddit was receiving online, members decided to donate to the Prostate Cancer Foundation as a token of gratitude to Jennifer Lawrence, since the actress had donated to prostate cancer research in the past. And in just 24 hours, the subreddit The Fappening would become the top donor of the foundation, and even the Prostate Cancer Foundation would release an official statement on September 2nd saying,
"A Reddit user directed other Reddit users to make a donation to the Prostate Cancer Foundation without the foundation's knowledge. We would never condone raising funds for cancer research in this manner. Out of respect for everyone involved and in keeping with our own standards, we are returning."
Hackers responsible for Kardashian, Selena Gomez, Mean Street then comments actually fell for it. On the other hand, the reaction from anyone who spreads the images online. Her lawyers would also send letters to several adult sites, demanding that they take down the pictures or face legal consequences. Reacting to her own leaks, Mary Winstead would post 2 tweets, blaming both the hackers responsible for stealing the pictures and the people distributing them on the internet.
"To those of you looking at the pictures I took with my husband years ago in the privacy of our home, hope you feel great about yourselves. Knowing those pictures were deleted long ago, I can only imagine the creepy effort that went into this. Feeling for everyone who got hacked."
Olympic gymnast Michaela Maroney also posted a tweet claiming that any leaked pictures of them them were fake. But following the day, her lawyer would put out a statement confirming that not only were the leaks real, but they were actually taken when she wasn't 18 yet. Meaning anyone who downloaded the pictures had just committed a felony. After seeing the amount of negative attention the subreddit was receiving online, members decided to donate to the Prostate Cancer Foundation as a token of gratitude to Jennifer Lawrence, since the actress had donated to prostate cancer research in the past. And in just 24 hours, the subreddit The Fappening would become the top donor of the foundation, and even the Prostate Cancer Foundation would release an official statement on September 2nd saying,
A Reddit user directed other Reddit users to make a donation to the Prostate Cancer Foundation without the foundation's knowledge. We would never condone raising funds for cancer research in this manner. Out of respect for everyone involved and in keeping with our own standards, we are returning all donations that resulted from this post.
They also tried to donate to water.org, an organization dedicated to providing aid to developing countries with poor access to safe drinking water and sanitation. But a Business Insider report on September 3rd would reveal that water.org also shut down the charity page so the Redditors couldn't donate. And about a week after the Fappening was created, Reddit would finally decide to ban it after the pressure from the public, which immediately resulted in a massive backlash from users, forcing Reddit admin Alien to release a long statement on r/announcements explaining the rationale behind the ban.
A very scummy thing happened this past Sunday. A number of very private and personal photos were stolen and spread across the internet. The fact that these photos belong to celebrities increased the interest in them by orders of magnitude, but that in no way means that they were any less harmful or deplorable. If the same thing happened to anyone you hold dear, it would make you sick to your stomach with grief and anger. When the photos went out, they inevitably got linked to on Reddit. As more people became aware of them, we started getting a huge amount of traffic, which broke the site in several ways. The same afternoon, we held an internal emergency meeting to figure out what we were going to do about the situation. Things were going pretty crazy in the moment, with many folks out for the weekend and the site struggling to stay afloat. We had some immediate issues we had to address. First, the amount of traffic hitting this content was breaking the site in various ways. Second, we were already getting DMCA and takedown notices by the owners of these photos. Third, if we were to remove anything on the site, whether it be for technical, legal, or ethical obligations, it would likely result in a backlash where things kept getting posted over and over again, thwarting our efforts and possibly making the situation worse.
Alien also revealed that the traffic on r/Fappening was so overwhelming, he had to break the subreddit a few times to prevent the site from total collapse, leading to the creation of more splinter subreddits. But when they found out that some of the pictures showed of Michaela Maroni when she was not of age, they had no choice but to bring down the entire subreddit. But while all of this was happening, some 4chan users would start spreading the rumors that a software engineer named Brian Hamade was the hacker behind the leak, after he tried to sell pictures of Jennifer Lawrence for $100 in Bitcoin. Brian had previously claimed that he was in possession of 13 pictures of Jennifer, 4 of which were explicit in nature. But after realizing how much trouble he'd gotten himself into, he immediately backtracked, revealing that he was only trying to make a quick buck off the controversy and that the pictures he was trying to sell weren't real. As for the actual hackers, the FBI would immediately kickstart an investigation into the leak. And since most of the pictures were taken from the victims' iCloud accounts, Apple would also announce that it had been investigating whether there was an actual security breach of the iCloud service or if it was simply a phishing campaign. And Apple would later come out with a statement saying,
after more than 40 hours of investigation, we discovered that certain celebrity accounts were compromised by a very targeted attack on usernames, passwords, and security questions. None of the cases we've investigated has resulted from any breach in any of the Apple systems, including iCloud or Find My iPhone.
By October 2014, the FBI was able to crack the source of the hacking attack to an IP address linked to Emilio Herrera's home in Chicago. He was the first of the 5 hackers to be arrested.